Hi everyone, my name is Monica Godoy and I am product manager on Apex team. And this session is about advanced CSS and JavaScript techniques to tweak your application user interface. Martin is the first Apex World Member of the Year, member of the Apex World admin team, and he is the guy who is answering all the questions on Slack. He's the founder of Max Solutions, where you can ask him anything Apex related. Welcome, Max.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Asmax, and I'm an Apex enthusiast, as you probably know. And if you want to visit me, I'm now located in the new Apex office headquarters, right on the top floor over here. All right, so let's get into the presentation now, and let me share my screen first. Okay. This up here and this over here, right? You can see my screen, can you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So today, as you just said, we're going to be talking, or at least I will be talking about CSS and JavaScript techniques that you will all be able to understand by the end of the presentation. I'm Maxime Tremblay. I'm from Canada, and I've been working as an Apex developer for more than 12 years now. And since I'm really passionate about Apex and about helping other people, I founded AskMax.Solutions, where you can ask me your questions for very little money. And you can try it for free because the first 15 minutes are for free. And I would say 95% of the questions can be answered within that 15 minutes. So basically the first answer is for free. And for more information, you can visit AskMax.Solution. And of course, and as always, everything is built with love using Apex. Okay, so in today's presentation, we're going to be talking about different things that you can do to tweak your application. So whether it's by using things that are built into Apex itself that maybe you're just not aware that they exist, or maybe it's by using some custom CSS or by using custom JavaScript or jQuery code. So first of all, as you're probably all aware of, the presentation is recorded, so don't worry about taking any notes. And everything is also already available on my GitHub account that you can go and you can use that link to go on it. And I'll also tweet that link after the presentation so that you can go back to it if you need to. And if you have any questions after the presentation, don't worry about it. You can reach out to me, no problems. So a couple of tips before we actually get started. So the first one I would advise you is to learn to know your dev tools, because as you all know, each of the browsers have their own built-in developer tools that we can use. And these developer tools can be really helping us in creating custom CSS or JavaScript debugging anything. So I strongly suggest that you have a look at what's available in the developer tools. So just to give you a couple of examples, you could do live CSS changes on the page directly. You could be toggling the element state. By element state, I mean like the hovering, the focus, the active state. And another one would be that you can search within the page, and not only within the source code of that specific page, but within all of the included files that are part of that page. So that can be really helpful if you're looking for, let's say, a JavaScript function and you don't really know where it's defined, or whether you're looking for a specific CSS class and you want to know in what file this was declared. So these would be a couple of things that you could do. So if we have a look at the JavaScript side, we can use things to help us debug everything. So obviously there are breakpoints that you can define, or you can use break on that's a feature. It's pretty similar to the breakpoint, but basically you can toggle a breaking on a specific element that will be listening in on a change on that specific element. So whether it's one of the embedded children of that specific HTML element, or whether it's an attribute on it. So you can do all sorts of things using the breaking on. And the other one is you can use the debugger keyword. So I won't go into too much details on these features, but I strongly suggest that you have a look at everything that is available, because these things will really help you either debug or create CSS or anything, really. And if I'm not mistaken, the next presentation that Jorge will be doing will be covering these features. So if you're interested, you can have a look at his presentation. All right, so that's about it for the presentation. Now it's demo time. So let's get right into it. So let me switch it over here. And let me show you my demo application now. Okay. So let's refresh everything. Perfect. So first of all, one small thing I would like to mention is that, yes, I'm talking about custom CSS and custom JavaScript, but I don't mean that presentation to be like, you should go ahead and create everything using custom JavaScript or custom CSS, because as we all know, because we need to first create everything and then maintain everything afterwards, or we could be maintaining code from someone else. So each line of code has a cost, basically, because as I just said, we need to maintain that specific line of code. So whether that you need to go through an upgrade or something different, then you'll need to go through all the custom code and validate that everything is still working the way it should be. So basically, what I'm saying is that try to use as less as possible, because that's going to be less code, so less maintenance afterwards. And when you do so, you can try to look for things like namespacing for JavaScript, and you can do the same kind of thing using CSS also, using maybe multiple CSS files that you would combine into one. Or you could use either less, which is now available directly in the theme roller, or you could use something like Sass also and build your CSS files using that. And if you do a lot of custom CSS in JavaScript, you should also check out the Apex Nitro tool, which helps a lot when you do all of this. Okay, so first thing I mentioned earlier was about using the built-in things that you might not be aware of. And let's jump right into it using the universal theme helper CSS classes. So the first one I would like to talk to you about is the responsive utility classes. So not a lot of the people, I think, are aware of these classes and that they're using it. So basically, the responsive utility classes, what they do is that they allow you to either show or hide a component on the page. So it could be a region, it could be an item, it could be anything you want, basically. So it allows you to show or hide something on the page depending on the width of the page. So let me quickly show you a simple example. So on that page, what I have is, actually I have two regions, but right now you can only see one because I'm using the hidden small down for the region, and for the other region, I'm using the opposite class. So basically what that does is, as I'll be reducing the width of that page, you will see that region be hidden away and you will see another one being shown instead. So as I'm reducing it, so over here I've got it set up for 992 pixels. So, and this is showing you the current page width live. So as I'm scrolling down, not scrolling, but reducing the width, you can see that our classic report was hidden, and now we see, well, another classic report, but that one is using a card-based template. So that one might be better for a mobile device instead of seeing that big classic report or an interactive report. So it might be easier for the users that are on mobile devices to use that card-based template instead of a big report that could have a lot of columns there. Okay, so the next one is similar to the responsive utilities, but it's a different set of classes which are for the grid layout. So as we all know, the universal theme is based on a 12-column grid on the page, so that each region is going to be taking a person instead of pixels on that page. So if I have, so in that case, I have a couple of regions defined. Some of them are using a 1-column. Some of them are using 2-column spans instead, 3, 4, and 6 column spans, as you can see over there. So actually, let me go into that page instead. All right, so that's the same example as on the other page. So the standard behavior is that as I'll be reducing the width of the browser, everything is simply shrinking down until we hit the extra small layout, where everything is now at that point on the extra small devices, so basically smartphones, everything would be taking all of the 12 columns. So that might not be exactly the way we want to present things to the user, because let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's say we have something like this. So as you can see, our 1-column span regions are too narrow, so we can't have the user see everything. So maybe things would be displayed outside of the container, just like what we have over here. Or maybe things are simply truncated and you don't see everything that you want to show to the user. So this is exactly where these grid layout classes come in really handy. So basically, they allow us to change that column span that we define in the page designer to something else depending on the width of the browser or the device. So in that case, for all of the 1-column span items I have over here, I define these classes. So what these will do is that for the medium devices, the 1-column span will now be 2 columns instead of 1. And so as I'll be going down, you'll see it go from 2 to 3 to 4 and then to 6. So let me show you actually what I'm talking about. So as I'm reducing the width, so over here you still see everything is taking 1 span, but if I'm going below 1200 pixels, you see that now my 1-column span elements on the page are now equal to the 2-column spans. And the same goes if I'm reducing, now everything is going to be taking 3 columns. And then if I go all the way, instead of taking all the 12 columns, I set up everything so that everything is taking 6 instead of 12. So maybe for smaller devices, you would like to have things right next to each other as opposed to always one thing on top of each other. So depending on your use case, these are the classes that you can use to further customize how you want everything to look for the user. The other two set of classes, basically, the first one is for anything layout related. So you can have a class to float things or to change the vertical alignment, the margin, the padding, the width, or the height of your regions. So basically, just go through all the possible classes and try to use them whenever you want or whenever you need to, basically. The other one is really similar to the layout modifier, but it's for the content instead. So you can choose to align text either at the start, at the center, or at the end. So it would be like left, center, or right. Or you can choose to transform the way the text look. So instead of maybe relying on some JavaScript to uppercase an item as you type, you could simply use that uppercase class and you'd be done with it. The only thing you need to be careful of is this is only affecting the visual representation of the actual input value. So if you type in something in lowercase, even though you'll see it in uppercase, it's still lowercase whenever you'll be saving that value. So if you're going to be relying on, let's say, the uppercase class, you should also combine that with maybe an upper computation as you submit your page, just to be sure that everything that you save on the page will be uppercase, basically. All right, so let's have a look at the actual demo things and things that we can customize. So the first one is, I would say, less useful nowadays because the universal theme it keeps getting better and better with each version. So everything is pretty good now, I would say. So basically earlier, the use case I had was basically something similar to that. So I had to show an interactive report inside a dialog page. Pretty standard thing. So the only thing that the users came back with is that they said, it looks like squished a little bit, so we would like to have it just a tiny bit wider. So maybe the first thing you would say is, sure, I'll just use the width attribute at the page level of that specific dialog page, right? But what I had before was that as the screen was getting smaller for, let's say, smaller devices, I had a scroll at the bottom, which wasn't optimal, I would say. So what I ended up doing is that I used a media query combined with a class. So basically, I defined a class which is setting the width, but according to the browser's width. So what that does is basically, for desktop devices, the dialog is as wide as we want it to be, basically. And as I'm scrolling and reducing the width, once again, as you can see over here, the dialog is changing width, basically, because the device is smaller. And then as I keep getting smaller, then no classes is applied, and everything is using the native responsiveness of the universal theme. Okay, so next one is regarding the fixed region header. So this example is specifically fixing the title of different regions, but actually you could use this for many different things. So you could fix, let's say you have one region on the left side and one region on the right side, and you would want that region to be completely fixed as you scroll the content of the page. You could use the same concept for that. And there are multiple other things that you can do using the sticky widget in that case. So basically, the use case is as you scroll, you'll see that the titles are going to be stick to the top of the page, just like this. So in that case, it might not be really useful because I basically have dummy regions without any content in them. But let's say you had a bunch of regions that would be very tall with a lot of content, then it might be good for the user to quickly see in which region they are on and basically what actually they're having a look at. And so this would be quite useful for that. And you can also choose not to stick some regions in that case. So you can see all of these that have the X icon are not going to be stick to the top of the page. So you'll see them scroll past and behind the sticky headers. So everything that is fixed, basically. So as I said, you can use this for multiple different situations or different use cases. As long as you know that you can use it, then use it as much as you want. All right, so the next thing I wanted to go through is confirm messages as well as alert messages. So I've seen a bunch of things, multiple different ways that you can do this, and there is no wrong way, I would say, but maybe there are some slightly better ways that you can go about it. And so actually, maybe the first thing that you would do is simply go and use the built-in alert, confirm, or prompt APIs that are built into each of the individual browsers. But actually, the downside to this is that each browser can implement that. So in that case, it's an alert message, and each browser can show the alert message differently. So in that case, I'm using Chrome, and Chrome is basically using the domain name as the title of that alert message. If you're using Firefox, Firefox is doing it differently, and if you're using Edge or Safari or anything else, basically, each could be showing you the same actual message, but differently. So that might not be exactly what you're looking for in your application. So maybe you look for something maybe more consistent throughout your application and throughout the different browsers. So that's where you could be using the built-in Apex message alert API that is built into the different JavaScript APIs that are available in Apex. So that message is HTML based. So whatever the browser you use, everything is going to be looking exactly the same, as opposed to the browser's way of doing alert things. One thing to note is that these alerts are based on the jQuery UI dialog widgets. So if you want to go fully customize or fully like code everything yourself, you could also do jQuery UI dialog directly. And you will have control over things like the title, if you want to have different buttons, do you want to use any icons in your buttons or things like that. So you could go fully customize that way through custom JavaScript. The other way you can do is by using an inline dialog region instead. And basically you get pretty much the same output as all the other ways that I just showed you earlier, but with that one, everything is built in. So you simply create a region, then you can have whatever content you wish for. So it could be HTML based, you could have some page items in there, or really anything you wish for. And at the bottom, these are using, so since everything is built in, it's also built-in buttons. So you could have as many as you want. You could have icons. You could use the hot icons if you want to, not the hot icons, but the hot buttons. So basically you can go fully customized with that one also, but by staying fully built in. So that could be really nice for your users. So as I said, by staying fully built in, you can also, since everything is like Apex regions, you can add classes to them or do other things if you want. So that simple example over here is that I'm changing that alert to be full screen for smaller devices. So let me just reduce the browser. So as you can see right now, the alert message is taking 100% of the width and the height of the browser, basically. So that could be one thing that you do for your mobile users. With 19.1, there is another option that you can use, and it's the inline pop-up. So it's very similar to the inline dialogues. The only difference, I would say, is that, as you can see, there is no title and there is no close icon on the top right corner. And the other difference is that if you click outside of that message, you'll see that the message will be removed, basically. So just be aware of these differences, and then you'll be able to choose which one you would like to go with. And as I said earlier, this is also fully built in. And since these are going to be showing your users Apex regions, you can decide to use an alert type region instead of a blank static region. So that way you could show an alert message that would have a greater visual impact to your users. Now maybe you're saying, it doesn't look too nice with that title. The title looks off. So you could simply go with the pop-up instead, and then the message you get looks really nice. You can also use the same thing, but with a confirmation message. So as I said earlier, you can use multiple buttons. So it could be like, I agree, I disagree, confirm, reject, and basically anything you want, really. So this is regarding confirm and alerts. So the next thing I use in pretty much all of the applications I do is with regard to the success message. So by default, you will see on the top right corner that green success message, and you will need to click on the small X to have it removed, basically. And a lot of users came back to me saying, well, I know I saved something and it's saved and everything is fine. So I don't actually want to click each time to close that success message. So is there something we can do to have the message disappear after, let's say, 3 or 5 seconds? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. There is something built into the Apex APIs, well, the Apex JavaScript APIs. So depending on what version you're working with, you might need to use either the Apex Theme 42 Configure Success Messages API, or with the new versions, you can use the Apex Theme 42.util.config Apex Messages. Whew. And so in this function, you can specify to have the message disappear after a specific duration, which is in milliseconds. And the default is 3 seconds. So in that case, I changed it to have it be 5 seconds instead, because sometimes you just have longer messages. So 3 seconds is a little short depending on how much you're displaying in your success message. The other thing I also do almost every time is, when you're showing a dialogue and then you do some action and you close the dialogue, whether you're using the close dynamic action or the close dialogue process, there is an attribute to send back the success message with that closing dialogue. But actually, that message is not shown back to the user automatically. So what I do is a simple function that basically listens on the Apex after close dialogue event. And whenever that happens, which is when a dialogue is closed, I will first check, is there a success message? And is there actually a text in that success message? And if there is one, I will use the show success message API to show it back to the user automatically without having to go through creating a dynamic action specifically for that in multiple pages. So let me show you everything and how it would be displayed. So if I close the dialog without any messages, nothing is shown to the user, just like what you'd expect. But if I close it with a message, without doing anything, I have my message shown on the corner over there. And this is also working, no, sorry. So let me take a step back. So there is also another thing I did. I'm not sure if it's showing good using the screen share going on right now, but actually what I did is that I also added a small progress indicator right at the bottom of that success message, just to let the user know when the success message is going to be hidden away. So let me show it to you once again. So as you can see over here, the process bar is reduced until the point where the message is closed. So in order to do that, it's only a couple of lines of CSS. So basically, I'm adding a pseudo element to the alert message element, and then to that element, I simply add an animation to it so that the width is animated from 100% to 0% over a duration of 5 seconds. So in that case, I hard-coded 5 seconds because I know that my JavaScript is using 5 seconds for all of the pages. But if you'd like to go a more dynamic way, you could generate custom live CSS using PL SQL, but you should try to keep with something fixed as much as possible. And that's all there is to it. So that gives a nice effect to your users so that they know that the message is going to be closed once everything is done. Okay, so next thing that is also possible, and I really like to do this whenever I can, and this is a pretty common design pattern that you start to see in multiple places. So basically the idea is to hide everything that is not that is not that the user doesn't need to see right from the start. So let me show you what I mean by that. So as you can see, when I'm going from the built-in way of showing things to my first example, you can see that I've hidden both the checkbox and the delete icon at the end of the region. And whenever these actions become relevant to the user, then I'm showing it to them. So when I'm hovering over a specific line, the checkbox and the delete icon will be shown because for that specific record now, these actions are actually relevant to them. And you see that design pattern. So you see it in multiple places, as I said before, like you see it in Gmail, Outlook, and most of the webmail clients. So when you hover over something, you'll see additional actions like mark as maybe spam, mark as read, reply, delete. So any sort of actions you will usually see only when you hover over some things. Over some like the actual emails. One additional thing that you can do is, so as I said, I'm only showing the actions when they're relevant to the user. So as soon as I click on something, then all of the other checkboxes are also becoming relevant because now the user is in the selecting mode kind of thing. So at that point in time, we can show all of the other checkboxes to the user. And everything is handled through a class at the region level. So basically I'm adding a force show checkboxes, something like that. You can have a look at the code itself in the application. It's actually pretty simple. So I have a listener on the click event of a checkbox that basically only adds a class to the report itself. So if you want to go a little further compared to example 1, so as you can see in my example 2, I tried to get rid of as much borders as possible so that the UI of the report is as clean as possible and as minimal as possible as well. And once again, I also have my delete icon and my checkbox icon shown only when it's relevant to the user. And as you can see, I'm also adding a different border around the record that is being hovered on, as you can see over here. And once again, when I'm selecting something, then all the other checkboxes are shown. And I'm also highlighting that selected record so that if there's like any sort of bulk operation at the top of the page, then it's very intuitive to the user and they'll know for sure that that action will be applied on all of the selected records. And it's very easy to see what records are being selected right now. In my last example, it's pretty much the same as my example 2, but the only difference is that maybe you don't only have the delete icon. Maybe you have a bunch of actions that you would like the user to be able to perform. So that might not be a great UI if you show maybe 5 or 10 actions to the user at the end of the report. Maybe what you're looking for is something different like this action menu instead. So whenever you click on something, so I clicked on that atoms row, and now I can go into edit mode of the atoms record, or I could choose to delete atoms or do anything really. So these actions are all driven by a PL/SQL function, so you can consider anything security-wise or anything related to that specific record. So if maybe you can't delete that specific record, or maybe you can print it out, maybe you can't. So it all depends on your use case. You get to choose what you want the user to see as the actions over there. All right, so let me skip that one and go into the overlaid navigation menu. With the latest version, there is something similar, which allows us to remove the icons whenever our site navigation menu is collapsed. So basically, that's something similar, but the difference is that when the menu is shown back, it's shown as an overlay, and it's not like pushing the content sideways. And so everything is overlaid on top of your content. So that would be something you can do with a couple of lines of CSS, once again, and a couple of lines of JavaScript. So basically the idea is to remove the left navigation class at the body level so that we don't need to worry about all of the CSS that is built into the navigation menu. And by that, I mean all the CSS that pushes everything back and forth. And basically after that, we simply add a custom class to the body, and then that custom class is what is driving all of the overlay part of the menu. Something else which is kind of similar to that overlay menu is that I'm not sure if you were aware of, but since Apex 5.1, we can move components around on our page without breaking anything. So with that, we can choose to move specific regions to the navigation menu. So in my case, I'm moving two regions. One above over here, which is displaying a profile picture. It could show other things as well. And I'm also showing another region at the bottom of the navigation menu. And basically, that's all the JavaScript that is required for that. And there is also a couple of lines of CSS to take care of everything in there. So one nice thing about it is that if we take that regions inside the navigation menu and we combine it with the overlay menu, we get a really nice looking navigation menu, which is something that we can see that type of menu in multiple online application nowadays. So this is something that is pretty common, I would say. So you have your profile picture at the top, you have some sort of links over here. So you could show basically anything you want in these regions that are moved inside your navigation menu. Another one I really like to use, depending on, once again, the use case, and this I would say can be pretty useful for something like a dashboard page where you will have regions with different KPIs that would show your user high-level information about some things, and maybe that's all they need to see at a glance when they log into the applications. But if they'd like to go and get more details about it, they could simply click on a button and flip the region over and show or see additional details from that specific KPI. So it could be anything you want, really. And you might have seen this because I know it's been used on Apex Will on that left side region where we are showing the Slack messages. There is a button at the top that is basically flipping through Slack messages and the forum threads. So that's one place where you can see it and where you can see that in action. Okay, Okay, we're still doing, we have like 5 minutes or so left. Another one that I also like to to use, basically these are all things that I like to use. So if you have anything to allow a user to do a selection of things in your application, maybe you're currently using the classic checkbox with a report, but let's say you would like to have that interface be easy to use for mobile devices. Um, you could use a card-based template similar to that one. And basically, the only thing you need to do is you click on one card to have it selected. And once you close, then using a dynamic action, you're able to refresh the report, basically. And if you want to have a look further into the code that I've got going on that page, there is a nice little feature on that search item. So usually what you would probably do is you would create a on key press dynamic action, and then you would have that dynamic action refresh the below report. But that might not be the best solution because let's say you type something which is 10 characters long, then you'll trigger 10 region refreshes, which is not optimal. So using a debouncing function, you can prevent all of these multiple refreshes. So basically, the debouncing, as I'm typing, nothing is happening. And as soon as I stop to type, then the refresh is triggered. So basically, this is it will wait for a specific amount of time during which there is no action triggered. And if at the end of that specific time, nothing happened, then the corresponding action, which is in my case, the refresh of the report, it will be triggered. So let's say I search for Jones. So as I'm typing Jones, as soon as I stop, it searches only once, and so it prevents multiple refreshes on your page. So that can be something quite useful if you don't want to load your server too much with refreshes call in multiple screens in multiple applications. And that's also true if you have a lot of concurrent users. So let's say you have 1,000 users that trigger 10 refreshes on multiple pages, then that creates a load on your server, which is not what you want to have. So I still have time, yes, for the last one, which you are probably also using, maybe not, maybe you're only using part of it, but basically when you want to give an indication that something on the page is being processed in the background, there are multiple ways that you can go about this. So probably one that everyone is aware of is the show spinner. So that's a JavaScript API available by default. If you're not aware of the API, it's also built into, if you do submit dynamic action, you can choose to show the spinner. So that's what's being used behind the scene. So let me show it to you in action. So basically, it will show a spinner icon on the page that is not blocking anything else from happening. So while this is shown, I can still click on anything on the page, navigate away, or do other things. So let's say that's not what you want to have. Maybe you want to have something that will block the user from doing anything else in the meantime. You could go and use the wait pop-up, which is under the widget namespace instead. So that one will, it's basically the same thing as the spinner one, but it also adds an overlay behind everything. So in between the spinner icon and the rest of the page, there is going to be an overlay preventing the user from doing any interaction with the page. So maybe that's what you're looking for instead of the spinner one. Depending, once again, on your use case, there are other ways you can go about it. One other way that I started to see more and more on some websites is that when you click on something, an icon is added to the actual button, and the button is disabled. So it would look something like this. So I'm disabling the button so I can't click multiple times on it. And at the end, you see there is a spinner icon over there. So that would be another way to show a progress inside a button itself. So I think that's about all I wanted to show you. I think we have questions that we should look into.
Yes, we have questions. The main question is, will this application be available for access to understand advanced CSS? For example, are they able to download this application?
Yes, yes. The application, as I mentioned earlier, is already available on my GitHub account. So you can download the application, you can install it. It's a 19.2 export. So if you're not at 19.2, then you can simply install it on apex.oracle.com to have a look at it. So the application is available, as well as all the CSS and JavaScript code unminified, obviously. And so everything, yes, is available. You can have a look at everything. And if you still have questions about how
Yeah.
some things are done, you can reach out to me. No worries, no worries.
Okay, perfect. Another question regarding Spiner, you actually mentioned some minutes ago. They want to know how to add processing speed when we click any link or on page loading. So I guess if they download the application, they are able to see how to work with this, right?
So they want to have a progress, so like an automatic progress indicator when they submit a page?
Yeah, when they click any link or they click a button, for example.
Yeah, so I would say if it's a pure link, so that link is doing a page redirect directly, so there is no actual page submit. So for these, it might be a little tricky, but there are things that you could do to work around these. But if it's anything like button or something else, you could bind the showing of a spinner with an event. It's something like Apex before submit. So you could create the or add the spinner on that event to have a spinner all the time. Yeah. So yes, that's possible.
Okay. Can you show how you are animating the icons in the left navigation bar?
Yes, yes. So, so I have these icons. So when you hover over them, there is a small animation, and you can also see the same thing going on for the icons at the bottom. So for that, I'm using something called Font Awesome, I think, animations. Animations. There is a library for awesome animation, so I think it's that one. So basically, it's a simple library that allow you to use animations on icons. So there are a bunch of them that you can use, and basically, you just need to tie them or to link them using a specific class. And so whenever you hover over them, it'll trigger the animation as you see over here. Yep.
All right.
It's also available in the code. You can have a look at it, and the library is also included as well.
Perfect. What is the function to detect mobile and JavaScript?
So the way that responsive applications are going about it is using media queries, and so you have thresholds. So actually, if I go back over here, so you will see that these are the thresholds that are being used by Universal Theme. These are also the thresholds that are used by Bootstrap. So it's pretty much the same thing. So basically, a media query is that you can specifically have a CSS only applied for one or more of these sizes. So that's what you could use. You could also use the same kind of concept using JavaScript. Yeah, it's also possible to do it through JavaScript.
Is
But the
there,
easiest, yes, would be to use the CSS media queries.
okay.
Yep.
Is there another class besides XSS for mobile only, not for not grid elements such as span or div?
Can you say that again? Is there a specific class for mobile devices to do what?
Is there another class besides XXF
S?
for
Yes.
mobile only
Uh-huh.
for not grid elements such as span or div?
Well, if you'd like to have something very specific that is not there, you can always define a custom media query. So I have one, so let me show you a very simple example. So basically you could do something like this, right? So you say at media only screen so for anything on the screen that has a minimum width of 768 pixels, use or define that class. And then you could do something else for a different size, or you could do min and then use a specific width combined with a maximum width. So it would be like between that width and that width, do this basically. So yes, you can customize everything in multiple ways.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you show us again the URL of your GitHub, please?
Sure. Can I do, hold on, let me copy it from over here.
Everybody is very excited to download your application.
Yeah. So I will tweet that link after the
Okay.
presentation so that you can use it easily and go back to it.
Okay.
So as I said, I have the demo application with all the source files. So everything CSS and the JavaScript, as well as the library I mentioned earlier. So found awesome animation over here. So yeah, you can use everything I have over here. Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, one last question, because we have several, but we don't have, I want that you have 5 minutes for the next talk. So the last question is, any tip for touch-based events on mobile?
I know that with, actually, let me go to, so if you have a look at the universal theme sample applications, there are events for mobile devices. If I'm not mistaken, everything is under mobile pattern, and you can use like touch gestures. So you could have a tap event, a press, swipe left, pan if you pan the device. So there are some predefined events that you could use for mobile devices specifically. Yes. So you can have a look at the sample universal theme application, and the shortcut for it, if you don't want to remember all of that, is basically apex.oracle.com/ut for universal theme. And then that will be redirecting you to this sample application.
Thank you so much, Max. And this is a
All right.
wonderful and amazing presentation. And
thank you.
see you later.